now we're studying how the non-cooperation movement of 1921 worked in the countryside. How countryside regions, that is the semi-rural regions, the towns, the small cities, how in these areas non-cooperation developed. Now we've already looked at how it developed in the cities, that is the urban areas. So now we're going to look at the rural areas, that is the countryside. And we'll be taking two cases here. Let's start with the first case, and the first case is that of Awadh. Now, Awadh is a city, is a small town in Uttar Pradesh, and it is, widely known for its culture and heritage even today. Even for the Nawabs of this region are very popular. But during the non-cooperation movement, this place was a significant area of activity, right? And there was one leader who led the movement in this region. There was one man who led the movement in this region, and his name was Baba Ramchandra. Baba Ramchandra was basically a laborer, an indentuated laborer from Fiji. He used to work in Fiji, but now he came to India to basically run the movement, to take part in the national movement. So Baba Ramchandra led the movement in Awadh, and it was basically a peasant movement. Okay, centered around peasants. It was a peasant movement. Okay, that's the first. Second thing. Now, basically, peasants in Awadh, they were really oppressed. They were tired of the conditions, of the atrociousness that was imparted on them by the landlords and the rich jagirdars there. So the movement was against the atrocious and merciless and the harsh landlords. So you can say movement against harsh landlords and talukdars. Talukdars again are government officials that take care of land distribution. So movement against harsh landlords and talukdars. These were the people who used to atrociously torture the peasants here. They used to trouble the peasants here, and there was high revenue. Okay, and there was begar which had to be given. Okay, and there was atrocious activity. So these were some of the things which took place in Awadh, right? There was high revenue imposed on the peasants and the laborers. There was begar, which was bonded labor free of cost, and there was atrocious activity on the peasants as well. And basically this was a movement against these people, and the main motives of this movement were motives of this Awadh movement. Main motives of the Awadh movement were reduction of revenue, then there was abolition of begar, that is bonded labor, which is bonded labor, and then lastly the abolition of rich atrocious landlords. Okay, so these were the things which were intended through the Awadh movement. Now what all took place here? There were nai dhobhi bands. Okay, now what this basically means is the services of the nai, which is the barber, and the dhobi, which is the washerman. These services were cut down to the rich landlords to basically make them realize the importance of the peasants, and they were stopped to be provided with such services. There were these bands, there were these strikes organized by the nais, that is the barbers and the dhobis. Okay, and later on in 1920, Nehru came to Awadh. And he basically took a tour of Awadh, understood the situation in Awadh, the social situation in Awadh. Okay, and ultimately in October 1920, the Awadh Kisan Sabha, Awadh, this basically means Awadh Kisan Sabha was organized under the leadership of Nehru, that is Jawaharlal Nehru, Baba Ramchandra, and a few others. Okay, Ramchandra, etc. So these two were the main leaders of the Awadh Kisan Sabha. Again, it was formed to address the problems of the peasants and the farmer communities. Okay, so the Awadh Kisan Sabha was established. Now, in 1921, when actually the non-cooperation movement started, the Congress wanted to integrate the Awadh movement into the national movement, because the Awadh movement could become very powerful if it was integrated into the national movement. So they wanted to integrate the Awadh movement into the whole national movement. But Congress leaders later became apprehensive of this because of the violent nature of the movement. So basically what happened was, the Awadh movement became violent in nature. The Awadh movement turned violent. People started attacking talukdars' houses, zamindars' houses, took over granaries, okay, and they looted bazaars. So again, Congress was led by Mahatma Gandhi, and Mahatma Gandhi was a peace-loving person, a Ahinsavadi person. So again, when this movement turned violent in Awadh, the Congress was unhappy. And hence, ultimately, what happened? The Congress distanced itself from the Awadh movement. Distanced itself from Awadh movement. Because of the violent nature of the movement turned violent later on. Okay. So it distanced itself from the movement. Because leaders in Awadh started telling people that Mahatma Gandhi and the Congress had declared that now no rents were to be paid, and people could, take over landlords and distribute it amongst themselves, which was wrong. That was not what had happened. So again, because of this violent nature and because of the misinterpretation of Gandhi's message, the Congress and other and prominent leaders distanced themselves from the Awadh movement. But no doubt, it was an expression of how the movement was interpreted. The movement and its ideology was interpreted by a particular section of the countryside. So here the motives are important. How the movement progressed, that is important, and why the Congress did not support it, that is important. Okay, so you can get a question from this Awadh movement. Again, when I try to explain things, I try to explain them so that you are able to understand. So Awadh was an example of countryside national non-cooperation movement, and these are the motives. This is how it progressed and how ultimately the Congress did not support it. Right? So that is with the Awadh movement. I hope it's absolutely clear to all of you. The second case we are going to consider to understand the countryside movement is more of the tribal perspective, how the tribals looked at it. And this was in the Gudem Hills. Gudem Hills. Now, Gudem Hills are a place in Andhra Pradesh. Okay, they are in Andhra Pradesh. And they are, they were inhabited by the Gudem tribes. Okay. They were inhabited by the Gudem tribes. Now, in the Gudem Hills, there was a militant guerrilla movement. Militant Guerilla Movement. So there was a militant guerrilla movement which was initiated against the oppressive officials of the British government in this region. And it was led by a semi-Gandhian. And why I call him a semi-Gandhian, you'll understand later. It was led by Alluri Sitaram Raju. Alluri Sitaram Raju. He led the movement in Gudem Hills in Andhra Pradesh. Okay, and he led this militant movement. Okay, basically in tribal regions, the local communities, the local tribes and local communities, they were barred from using forest products. Barred from using forest products or practice forest culture. Stopped from using forest goods and stopped from practicing forest culture. Now, you know that, if you really are interested in history and in social sciences, you'll understand that tribal communities have a very strong bond with the surroundings, with the environment. And when they were stopped from using forests, and actually they worship forests, Again, they used to worship forests and they were stopped from, completely cut off from forests. This actually created some anti-incumbency against British, but in the minds of the tribal communities. Okay, so local communities were barred from using forest products, they were stopped from practicing forest culture, and again all this created a sense of hostility towards the British government. And ultimately it culminated in a militant guerrilla movement. Why? When they were told to contribute begar for road building. When they were told to contribute begar, that is bonded labor, for road building, the people revolted. Okay, when they were told to do so, they revolted, and ultimately this revolt led to the militant guerrilla movement in Gudem Hills. Okay, now this Alluri Sitaram Raju led the movement, and he was a semi-Gandhian, that is half Gandhian. Why I call him half Gandhian, you'll understand. Okay, he was semi-Gandhian because he supported Gandhian ideologies and considered him an idol. Okay, and considered Gandhiji an idol. Okay, he supported, he encouraged people to wear khadi, that is a national cloth which even Gandhiji promoted, to wear khadi, and give up drinking. So he urged them not to drink because again alcohol has its bad effects. So give up drinking. But keeping all these things in one place, that is his Gandhian ideologies, he, unlike Gandhi, believed that India could only be liberated only by force. So that is what he believed. And Gandhiji did not believe that. Gandhiji believed that it had to be done through non-violence. But he believed that India could only be liberated by force. And hence, he took up this militant guerrilla movement, right? They attacked government offices, government police stations, they raided them, they attacked police officers, and hence there was a militant guerrilla movement in the Gudem Hills. Ultimately, during 1921, this grew a lot, very, very prominent in Gudem Hills, this movement, this strong movement. But again, in 1924, he was arrested and hanged. Okay, he was arrested and hanged by the British government. But over time, Alluri Sitaram Raju became a folk hero all across this region and in other parts of Andhra Pradesh. Right? So I hope this is absolutely clear. This Gudem Hills example tells us about the tribal perspective, how tribal communities really interpreted the national movement and how their interpretation was different from the actual movement itself. So basically in this way we're trying to understand how in the countryside, through Gudem Hills and Awadh, we're trying to understand how in the countryside people actually interpreted the non-cooperation movement and its ideologies. Right? I hope it's absolutely clear. Thank you very much for joining me. In the next video, we will be continuing about the plantations, and this will end the unit, differing strands in the movement. Thank you.